All right. As said, my name is Bart De Lathouwer. I work for the OGC, and I'm here representing the OGC membership. Here's the agenda I had prepared for today. So I'll give you a quick introduction to the OGC, and then specifically after that, the collaboration with OGC, BSI, and ISO. I have a couple of other related topics that I would like to share with you and get some feedback and then conclude. Now, we're an hour after lunch, so this is the critical moment, right, for you to fall asleep. Please don't, but here's what most people think when they hear about standards, right? So please locate the nearest exit. Mind that it could be behind you, okay? This is where the, I don't know, when he's at the airplane. So, you know, this could be a tad boring. I will try to keep you awake and, you know, make it as amusing as possible. But bear in mind, this could be somewhat painful. So this is my one-slide introduction to the OGC. We are a not-for-profit organization, and we just hit the 500 member mark. We had our 20th anniversary this year, so I think we're in full puberty, and so that's kind of fun. So there's great pleasure here that there's a lot of OGC members in this room, so thank you for your support. We also have an OGC board member with Rob van der Velde here as well, so that's great support for the OGC. The OGC mission, and this is I promise the only one that I'll read from my slide, is the core mission is to deliver interface specifications. What that means is that the OGC does not implement, nor do we recommend software. What the OGC membership does is make interface specifications. So the what, not the how. Okay, my moments of fame with the clicker. Let's see, where's the sweet spot? Yeah, it is. Where's the, oh, drat. Let's see, okay, here we go. I'll do it manually. This is pretty much the crux of my presentation, is the memorandum of understanding between OGC, Building Smarter International, and ISO. I think this is pretty big. These are industries that are formally meeting and trying to work on joint standards, joint interfaces. If you can only remember one thing from my presentation, I know, it's kind of dozing off here a bit. If you can remember one thing, let it be this one. This is pretty big. Remember, the OGC have, the SDOs working together. That's a pretty big statement. But it's not the first time that we collaborate with Building Smart. We have done a test bed in 2009 where we tried to deliver models through OGC web services and render them out. So this is something that we have tried before, but I believe that the stars weren't aligned in 2009. And I believe today we live in a decade where a lot of technology is coming together. And I think we're going to have more success with this. I also sum up some relevant working groups within the OGC, and Live touched on some of them, actually previous speakers as well, is on City GML for representation of cities. Indoor GML, I share Live's vision in a way that this is going to be the next big thing. We know how to navigate outdoor, but the next big thing is going to be the indoor. And there's going to be applications that at this stage we do not understand that will be, Live set new markets, and absolutely that's true. Urban planning for urban and regional planners. Land and Infra DWIG, another one that we work on. No. Good. Why do we do this? Well, because it's a lot of fun, but because we can, but also because the Dutch word is cost of failure, and I believe it was translated this morning to overall cost. I thought the number was between 12 and 13%, but BRIM this morning told us that it was actually 20%, so it's far worse than what we thought. I think if we can just scratch off 1%, that it is going to be big. So this is ultimately why we do it, more efficiency and to decrease the loss of information. I hear of this little graph, and I'm sure you all have seen this a couple of times before. But this is, from a user perspective, pretty painful and frustrating. That he builds information in, and what I depict here is sort of the workflow. And I know this isn't correct, but I think you understand the picture here, is that you build information, you build knowledge in that planning phase, and then you want to throw it over the wall, and then someone says, well, I can't read the format, or the model is not consistent. For instance, could have a piece of infrastructure that is modeled as 3.5 tables on the planning side, and then it's 2.5 tables on the conceptual design. So there is that big or possibility for loss of information. That is very frustrating. So you see conversion, recreation of data, the worst that could happen. But still, this is happening today. And ultimately, where we want to go is to have that seamless flow of information. Somewhat utopia here, but hey, allow me some of that utopia. And we believe that this could be achieved not just by using open standards, but I believe they play a big role in this. Just to pick up at this stage on what Leif said on standards and innovation. I think standards themselves are not innovative, but standards allow for innovation. That's a very important one. So if you have that growth of knowledge and innovation, and then it levels off. And that's where you see that the use of the standards then allow for that new area or era of growth. And I think if we can do that here, that will help us tremendously. All right. So we hear about, the name of the conference is about Geo and BIM. So if I take this workflow, where is Geo, where's BIM on this one? Again, I know this is not 100% correct, but bear with me. So I think on the planning and the conceptual design, that's where you get a lot of overview. And that is where geospatial is really good at, is giving that overview with some level of detail. But once you really start to zoom in, that's where you get into the world of BIM. So think of it as, you're sitting in an airplane, you have a window seat, not a middle seat. You're flying at 40,000 feet, you look outside. That's a very geospatial-ish look of the world. But once you start to descend towards the landing, then things starts to look, like, you see the detail. The entry into the highway isn't just like a random curve or a multi-line segment, it's actually a clotoid. Some folks put a lot of thought into making that entry to the highway. And then maybe the analogy stops there, but with the airplane and a building. Once you really start to zoom into that building, then the context disappears and it becomes all about the building itself, the vertical building as was referred to earlier, or the horizontal one, being it for infrastructure. So bringing this back to, title of my presentation on OGC and BSI coming together, where is the sweet spot? Where can we show some early success with this collaboration? So civil engineering are sort of squeezed between the geo world and the BIM world. They're a bit of both in a way that they're very earth-related. They know what a coordinate system is. And they know how to model, that is, if you move a road, that everything that is connected to that road moves as well. At the same time, they're somewhat file-oriented, while the geospatial world is more oriented toward web services and databases. the BIM world now being, model-based. So what happened in the past is, I had a sort of a different answer to your question than what the predecessor of BIM was. So I thought like, that doing digitally what we did in an analog way before, drawing lines. That had ultimate flexibility, by the way. You could draw whatever building, just drawing lines. You could do the Escher building, just drawing lines. But you would be unable to do that in a BIM. A BIM is I have to say, it's restrictions, it's structure that has been applied. And if you want to design something that the model doesn't support, tough luck. This is reality, and this is something that we continuously need to work at to make sure that the models can evolve and that we can, that architects, structural engineers, civil engineers, people that put HVAC into buildings, electricity and all that, can do whatever they want to do using the model. But just, reality check here. So I got some two pictures here. Now, I alternate them. I'm not able to say whether this is GIS, whether this is civil engineering, or whether this is BIM. I have no clue, to be honest. And I believe that is a good thing. But it is the thing that we want to start with in the collaboration with the OGC, BSI, and ISO as part of the MOU. We believe that this is low-hanging fruit, something where we can show some early success in a tool where we can start sharing information on alignments. This is the part where Marcel, where's Marcel? Oh, Marcel. You got me scared there, I couldn't see it. Marcel's here. So he'll cover this in plenty more detail. The only thing I just wanted to say is what we're trying to do with the organizations that work on this, and actually the people that are on this group are all organizations that are in this room. So that's really good news, is what we're trying to do is have an abstract specification, which we can commonly agree on, that have an encoding in both IFC and that have an encoding in GML. And therefore, we have 100% interoperability. So it's making that concept model. Good. Now, whilst we're at it, this is something totally different, and I added this slide from what I heard this morning and in related topics, is each project, each organization creates their own models right now, or call them ontologies, taxonomies, all your favorite words. And we're sort of in this storming phase where we can add them all, but it doesn't mean interoperability. We're not interoperating. We just have this bunch of libraries out there. And I believe it's time to harmonize, where we need to, I call it to bless dictionaries or ontologies, whatever you want to call them, but that is it either legislation or does it go through the standards developing organizations, but where you can say, okay, these are the 20. We talked about this morning, we had 300 definitions, was that it? And we want to reduce them to like 15 or 20. I think there's someone needs to start blessing with the authority to bless. And pardon, I don't want to make any religious references. It's just the way you can say, okay, here are the ones that we're going to work with. I would call that the norming phase. Maybe a good topic for discussion. I leave it up to you. And another one, and I put this one in specifically, is I haven't heard the word inspire yet. So it is a European directive for sharing of geospatial information. So there is already quite some legislation out there to share geospatial information that includes building information based on city GML. So this is absolutely something that we need to put on the table and get the BIM world engaged in as well, whether you like it or not. Prior to this meeting, I regularly visit the construction companies, and they showed me how, what their workflow was. Interestingly enough, so I was visiting a company that was doing road design, and they were actually accessing some of the Inspire information through a portal called PDOK here in Holland. Who's familiar with PDOK? Raise your hand. Okay, all the ones that haven't raised their hand, open up your laptops and type pdok.nl, okay? You don't have to listen to me. Just go to pdok.nl and see what's out there. Far more interesting what I have to say here. And so in their workflow, what they would do, they would go to the portal and they were doing road design in area, Utrecht here in Holland. So they would type in Utrecht, they would see all the terrain information, cadastral information. They would click on the entry, they would go to the metadata, they would write down by hand what the URL is to that data set. They would then go into the design software, file, add, or web service, open, type that URL again. So I'm already happy that they use the authenticated and authoritative data that the government puts forward, but there's already some API to this. There's an OGC catalog service for the web that actually allows for find and bind. And actually some of the software providers have already this baked in. So if you're a designer of infrastructure or buildings and you want to access that information, you want to talk to your software provider to allow or to enable this for you. Some technology trends. Again, some of the folks before me have touched on this one. I heard the Internet of Things. This morning someone said dynamic models. What I believe this is, and this is the interesting times in which we live right now and tomorrow, right? This is not something that you cannot do today. All this exists today. The Internet of Things is here today. So think of, if you haven't heard about it, Raspberry Pi, Arduinos, BeagleBones, that sort of stuff. Very tiny computers that are IP enabled and very powerful. And what they'll allow, so I believe it was Christophe this morning that said, we're going to put these things into the building, into the concrete. And what they'll do is they'll report on the status of the infrastructure itself. So the administration, and my definition of an administration is it's sort of, it allows you to say something about reality without you seeing reality. That's an administration. So with the Internet of Things and sort of the virtual world hitting the real world, is the infrastructure will report itself what the condition is. It's not the administration anymore. The administration will just be a look in the past of the infrastructure. So this is some pretty powerful stuff here. Open, we see the trend in open hardware, open software, open standards. Who's familiar with GitHub? So that's typically where a lot of the open source and whatever that is open source go-tos at this stage. So something to look at. Is it gamification? I don't know how to pronounce it. The best city model viewer, in my opinion. Who has a suggestion on what the best city modeler is, or viewer is? City viewer. Bingo. I would say Far Cry number 4, the one that went in premiere yesterday. Or Grand Theft Auto 5 is also really good. And by the way, these guys are looking for real city models, but it's, somewhat touchy because you don't want to give your city model and then you'll see your favorite city where you walk around with like a bazooka and, the sort of games. Mobile and cloud, Marek touched on that one. That's a big game changer as well. In the past, we had the battle of the operating system. With the cloud now and software as a service, we're going to go into an era of the battle of the browser. Is it IE, is it Chrome, or that'll be the new operating system where you're going to run your software. So again, these are topics that we address within the OGC that we are currently working on. Big data has been announced as well, so that's all the V's that are associated to big data. Think of volume and velocity. Another one specifically here for people that are designing buildings is citizen participation, social media. People are getting more They communicate faster to the outside world. There's communities that are being created for or against something, which means that if you do public works or you're going to change something out there, you have to communicate about it, and openly and visibly. I think that this is very important. But also that the community can participate in, think of OpenStreetMap. Who's familiar with OpenStreetMap? Yeah, so I have a lot of folks, that's good. So that is citizens contributing. By the way, this does not replace any government data set. It is an addition to the government-issued, authenticated, authoritative data. All right, so that's one to remember. And then semantic information, so we see, you know, the web of, or the semantic web, where you start modeling in OWL and encoding in RDF. Again, I believe these are topics that if we come together, again, I hope we can. I think these are going to be topics that'll get a lot of attention. So just to conclude, I think the collaboration with OGC and the BSI and OGC TC 59, this is big news. This is really industry getting together and trying to solve, you know, the hiccups in the workflow. The initial focus will be on infra GML, so Marcel will talk to us about that. And what we ultimately want to do is the user, the designer, the architect, the civil engineer, the structural engineer, is to focus on a business problem, not so much on recreating data or converting, you know, that existing data set. That's a waste of time. Now, here's the action item. Every presentation has to have an action item, as once told. So standards do not create themselves. Standards are created by people like yourself. So my question or my action item to you is please participate in the standards developing process. If you're not part of that, then, you know, think about it. And again, this could be the OGC, BSI, W3C, you name it. But please, there's a wealth of information that you have that others would like to learn from and that we can incorporate in the standards making. So with that, if you have questions, here is my email address. Please feel free to send me this. And this is a quote from Tom Magliozzi, who passed away 2 weeks ago, unfortunately, from, who knows, Car Talk. And I believe it was Christophe Castain that said it this morning. We're setting big expectations with BIM, really big expectations, and we have to make sure that we can deliver on those promises that we're making. If not, you know, we might burn ourselves. So, you know, let's be very careful on this one. Oh, no, sorry.
Thank you very much. Thank you as well for the excellent overview and for also giving us, let's say, some hints of urgency. Because that's my question about. You're stating, and I think I can follow you, that there are so many, let's say, libraries and definitions are there, but the action will not become action before someone or we all together make some decisions. And you were talking about the authority. And my question is, can you give a little bit more hints? What do you expect? What do you expect from, let's say, the stakeholders in the room? We have the companies in the room, we have the government in the room, we have the architects, we have the scientists. What do you expect?
Well, there are initiatives in the various countries. I believe here in Holland it's the Conceptenbibliotheek that tries to unify parts of a building. I think these are things that you need to embrace and collaborate in. And so, you know, as a government, you can lead this, but also you're seeking for outside participation from the people that are actually going to use this, from the software providers, you know, the entire community, the community of practice that needs to embrace this as well, and they need to be invited and be part of it. And then ultimately someone's gonna, you know, do the blessing.
Any other questions to Bart? Yeah, Hendrik, you can use the microphone.
But my name is Hendrik Westerbeek.
Hendrik?
Is it works? Yeah. And I might be a little bit a stranger in town here because I'm a social geoscientist. What we are doing in the Netherlands is trying to involve education and people in our issues. I liked very much your final statement that standards is about people. So we have to relate somehow these things to make this technical innovation and business innovation successful. We need somehow, I think, a social innovation agenda too, about education, human capital, things like that. Are you considering these kinds of things also within your trends?
Yes. So I think definitely, well, the previous commission had Nelly Cruz with the digital agenda that clearly had the human capital in there as one of the drivers. We can invent as much technology as we want. If people don't adopt it or they don't like it, forget it. You know, Google Glass is one of them. Then another one was on education. So what we're doing, and what the OGC did in the past that was very successful, is with the introduction of web services, was we made a book called a cookbook, an SDI cookbook. I think we need to do the same thing here. We need to make a cookbook, and you know, this could be the combination of GIS and BIM or that civil engineering. Same would go, by the way, for the semantic web as well. So is creating curriculum on how to teach this and how to spread this information. I don't know if I fully answered your question. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Live. You have a microphone? Yeah.
Not a question, but a comment,
Yeah.
Bart, about this, the standards covering everything, but because my point there, I maybe didn't mention it quite good enough, but the focus in BIM is transferring from creating the information to consuming it and using it. And that's the big change, that touches everybody. And the interesting thing is that it also makes everybody be an information creator, because as Bryn said, when you move dirt from one side of the road to the other, you log what you do and you create the as-built information automatically.
Yep.
So that's a huge change.
Yeah.
And if
Final question? Yeah. You can use the microphone. Yeah. Please stand up and introduce yourself. Sure.
Emmanuel Devis from IGN France. Just a comment. I'm happy that you mentioned Inspire. I am coming from the geo domain, you understand that. And Inspire, as you mentioned it, as a specified buildings thematics, but there are also cadastre, also thematics of interest, utilities, etc. So, and there is also an Inspire geoportal where some data sets are already available.
Yeah, yeah. So once you're finished with pdok.nl, type in Google Inspire Directive. And
Thank you, Bart. Thank you again.